So, guys, I wanted to comment on a really bizarre interview I saw, and it's Robert Kiyosaki being interviewed by this journalist about gold, Bitcoin, and COVID 19. And he said some really concerning things in this interview regarding COVID and Bitcoin, which has me questioning a lot of the things he said in the past and moving moving forward. I mean, honestly, I'm obviously a fan of Robert Kiyosaki. Anyone who hasn't read his books, you should read them. You'll obviously understand that this guy knows a lot about personal finance and wealth creation, especially for us young people. But I do get concerned whenever I see someone who pushes for one side of the coin and then next thing they've changed, they switch sides, and then next again they're back on the opposing side, then they switch sides again, and it's like they play both sides and never commit. That's what really concerns me about this interview, because he says in this interview that, listen, um, remember what I said back in. I'm trying to basically comment on what he's saying, which is that he was advocating for Bitcoin a few months ago. You know, he was like, Bitcoin's going to change the world. It's the future. Everyone should get involved. And essentially that was his position. And then all of a sudden he switched sides and he's like, you know what I said about Bitcoin the other day? That it can do what gold does and even more. And that it's gold 2.0. It's an electronic version of gold. It's a transfer of what you can transfer wealth, you can store, it's a store of value, and it can be an exchange of wealth, like similar to like the banking system. It can replace the banking system. And then he says, you know what I said, forget that. Gold is better than Bitcoin. I've been collecting gold since the dollar was removed off the gold standard. And he's talking about the history of removing the gold, removing the dollar off the gold standard with Nixon and all of that. And I'm like, yeah, but you were saying the other day that, Bitcoin is going to replace gold. And then all of a sudden, no, 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 no. Remember what I said there? Gold is here to stay, and I'm bullish on gold. There's a Bitcoin bubble. So he's now saying there's a Bitcoin bubble, and that as soon as we have a vaccine for COVID, Bitcoin is disappearing. But we have a vaccine, or we have the best vaccine we possibly can at this point, and that hasn't affected the price of Bitcoin. In fact, it's actually contributed to a huge surge in the price close to the end of this year. So now I'm very concerned, especially like with a lot of people, because like I'm trying to learn about blockchain, Bitcoin, especially during this COVID time. I'm trying to understand where we're going, because clearly I've realized that the world as we knew it isn't going to be the world the next 3 5 years, and so it's best, even if I don't know anything about cryptos or blockchain, it's best for me to figure it out, understand how it's going to affect us and me, because it affects every single sector, whether you're in the legal sector, finance sector, medicine, it affects everyone. But now, when people switch sides like this, where they play both sides and then they never commit, so they play both sides and then they never commit. He's like Kevin O'Leary. He says Bitcoin is good, it's the next big thing, then turns around, no, it's a bubble. Uh, then turns around again and says, you know what? It's the next big thing. It's a game changer. It's going to change gold. It's going to beat gold. Then they change again and they say, no, there's a bubble. It's coming as soon as we have a vaccine. No, let's go back to gold. No, you know what? Bitcoin. And that's essentially what they do, so that um, whatever ends up happening, they'll just pull up a video and say, I told you so. And number one, that leads to a lot of mistrust, especially amongst, people like us who just want to learn and figure out what's going on. When you're playing both sides of the coin and actually end up saying nothing, because you say everything but end up saying nothing at the end of the day. And I don't know what you guys think, but I just found it very concerning that, specifically the line he said that once we find a COVID 19 vaccine, there will be no use for Bitcoin. That's essentially what he said in this video. He said, once we have a vaccine, number one, the bubble will blow, and number two, we'll have no use for Bitcoin. And but Bitcoin's uses were evaluated and were actually Bitcoin's uses were acknowledged way before COVID came. Everyone saw the value of blockchain technology way before COVID. So I don't understand why he says all of a sudden we won't have a use for it, as though we are only using Bitcoin for COVID purposes, which is very strange. And also the fact that we already have a vaccine, but that's just actually contributed to the surge in the price. I don't know whether I was the only one who was concerned about this video, but I just found it very concerning. I don't know. Just my 2 cents.